Howdy, I'm Derek, and in this video we're going to walk through several different examples of custom data validation in Excel. Make sure to download the example workbook that we're going to be using during this video that shows several different examples of custom validation that you can use in your everyday work. See the link to this in the comments below. Excel's data validation is a powerful but quite underused feature that is often your first line of defense in data quality, as well as just guiding your users as to what's expected, right? Now, it's not bulletproof, but it is a good first line of defense. So let's dive in. Now, if you're not familiar, let's go through a couple of standard data validation types just so you understand, and we'll jump to some of these custom examples. So to apply data validation, select one or more cells. Go up to the Data ribbon tab, and then the Data Tools section, click Data Validation. Now the cell I've got highlighted doesn't have any, so it's going to say allow any value, but there are several types here. Could be a whole number, and you can give it a range or greater than, less than, or all the other operators you can think of. Could be a decimal, or it could be a list. Come back to that in a minute. Date, time, text length, or custom, which we'll look at in depth after the standard ones here. So if we wanted to look at one that is a list, okay? Let's go with one that's pretty basic here. This one is just a list that you can use and separate the different allowed values with a comma that you're seeing right there. But if you wanted it to be dynamic and update automatically linked to a source, here's how you're going to apply that. So same thing, this is list here, and we've linked it to a named range. Well, that named range happens to be linked to a list that basically looks for the bottom of a list over here, or it could be a variety of other ways that you do that. So notice that when you press the Alt and down arrow, and it shows you the list of values that are in that data validation list, it's going to show you those, and gray matches over here. But if we add something like pink, notice that it's going to update automatically. And if we take some away, it's going to update automatically for those as well. Okay, so very powerful, lots of standard validations, but what we want to do in this video is focus on the custom examples. So the first one that we're going to look at is going to require a user to enter one letter followed by 6 numbers. Okay, now we're going to do this together, and then I will explain the formula that we're using here. This is all based on formulas, very much like a custom conditional formatting rule that you're writing. Basically, you want that formula to result in true or false. Okay, so we're going to come over here, pick custom. I'm going to copy and paste the different sets over here, so I don't have to type it out. Once you do a few of these, hopefully you'll do the same, not have to type out every single time. The other couple of things that you can do in data validation is give your users a custom input message, and anytime they pick the cell that has this applied, they're going to see this message. You'll see in just a moment. I highly recommend that. It is optional, but I definitely recommend that. The other thing I do recommend is giving a custom error message. So when they enter something that's not right, this is what it would display. Okay, so give it a title, give it a description. If you do not do this on the error alert tab over here, it's just going to give a standard error, and they may not know what the heck's going on. Okay, so once we apply those, notice that when you select the cell over here, when you don't select it, the message goes away. When you do, it's going to show that message. All right, it's up to you. Some people think it's annoying. I think it's quite helpful when you don't have a ton of inputs, because it really does guide the users, including your future self. Okay, so if we try to enter something like 5 here, okay, notice there's that custom message. Cell requires a value with 1 letter and 6 numbers. Please try again. Okay, so let's try again. And this time I'm going to copy and paste a value that does meet that criteria. Okay, and you can also see down here, I put the formula that's the same formula that's under the hood in that data validation, because I find that when you have a complex custom validation, it's helpful to troubleshoot that and kind of see what it looks like as it goes. Okay, now to break down this formula, because it's very similar to what we'll see in other examples, and here indicates that we have multiple conditions. Now in the first one, we're saying, hey, the leftmost character, the first character in A5 over here, needs to be not a number. Okay, so not is number, the value of that. Okay, the second condition is for the rightmost 6 characters, it needs to be a number. Right, and then the third condition is it needs to be 7 characters long. So letter, 6 numbers equals 7. That's how this one would break down. Okay, now in the second example, we're going to change it up just a little bit and say it needs to be 2 letters and 3 numbers, but those can be anywhere in the value. So it could start with 2 letters, end with 2 letters, have them sprinkled throughout, whatever the case might be. And you're seeing a valid value that's in here. So the formula that we're using, there's actually a couple of ways to do this. One way that has worked for a long time, and there could be many, many more, just so you know, for any of these examples, right? Whatever works for you, if you test it out, great, go with it. In this second example, we're basically saying, hey, is there 2 where we have letters? Okay, so it's basically going to create an array of all of the different characters, and if it finds 2, okay, that checks that box. And then if it finds 3 that are in a string of numbers here, it checks that box, and then it's going to use both of those conditions, okay? So that's one way to do it. The other is with these newer regular expression functions. If you're not using a recent version of Excel from the last couple of years, you probably don't have access to these, but regular expressions are a way to identify a very, very, very specific pattern. If you're not familiar with that concept, give it a Google or ask AI to kind of explain it as if you were like a 10-year-old. It's pretty fascinating what you can do with this. The really, really big software companies use this quite a bit. And now you can too in a very similar way within Excel. Next example is specifying very specific letters. So in this case, INV for like invoice, or maybe it's inventory. And then it needs to be 4 numbers right after that. So the total length needs to be 8. So we've got those 3 conditions. In this case, it's true. Okay, so you could use an example like that. Or this one, maybe it's dates. We're capturing dates a lot in Excel. So this is saying, hey, it needs to be a Tuesday. Just so happens that the 6th of January was a Tuesday. If we try to make it the 7th, it's going to say, hey, it doesn't match. So there's that very generic message if you do not configure that error alert. Okay, we're just going to keep that at 1/6/26. But all this is doing is saying, hey, is it not blank? So that is a condition you can add to everything if you want to. It's pretty common in the ones I use. And then the weekday needs to be a value of 2. That's how that function works. Similarly, if you need it to be any weekday, okay, you would just say, hey, very, very similarly, as long as it is below 5, because 6 is Saturday and 7 is Sunday, in the way that we've kind of set up the parameters here, then it's good. So dates, very common there. If you want it to be from the current year, okay, that's where we're going to throw in some more volatile or dynamic functions in here. So can't be blank, needs to be after January 1st of the year that is today. So this is calendar basis. And it needs to be below or equal to 12/31 of the year that is today. So a value from the current year. Very, very helpful. Another one that I've used many times is where the value needs to be related before or after to some other date field. Maybe you've got a bunch of data points and several of them are dates, and you want to make sure that 1, it's not blank, but 2, the value here is above some maybe starting point. Okay, so there's that condition, so it's relating to that. Now notice in all of these that we've used relative references. Now, just like with your other formulas, you want to be careful with the ways that you're using those. Now, if it's just like this, probably doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. If you make structural changes, those are going to adjust like in regular formulas. But if there's some date up at the top and you're going to drag this down, you want to make sure you use those dollar signs to make it more of an absolute reference. Another example here, percentages. Now, you can do this with the standard formatting or the standard, data validation, but you can also do it with a custom formula here. Some people prefer this because it makes it a little bit more dynamic. That's great if you like that. Another example here is it unique? Is it not already in the list? Okay, so you're seeing all these different foods that start with different letters of the alphabet. If we were to put something in here that says onion, because that already exists, it's going to say, hey, it needs to be unique, cannot match anything in a list. So if you've got unique identifiers or something, you want it to continuously look up to the list. That's where, again, those relative and absolute references will be quite helpful. So in this case, it's basically saying, hey, there either needs to be none that already exist in the list, or maybe there's only 1, depending on kind of how you set that up. Another example here is a US zip code. So maybe you want it to only be 5 digits, and that's it. It needs to be numbers and only 5 characters. Great, this is going to let you do that. So it needs to be 5, and those all need to be numbers. The double negative here basically takes a false or true value and flips it to binary. So false is 0, true is 1, and that makes it work for math, like 1 + 1 + 1, or basically if you have a lot of AND conditions, if any of them is false, that's a 0, and if you multiply by it, makes everything 0. So there's a lot of creative ways to use that. So if you're seeing that double negative anytime, that's basically where somebody is converting true or false to 0 or 1. Just a couple more here. Valid email address. This is using the regular expression. Now, there are other ways to do this, but I highly recommend using regex, as it's called for short, because it's powerful and can be very specific. So it's saying, hey, here's the email address, here's the pattern we want to apply to, here is the reg extract, is it an error or not? And it's basically going to apply that. So if we were to leave off the last couple of letters here, it's going to say, hey, it doesn't match those data validation restrictions. Going to result in false. So that doesn't work. And then lastly here, just like the date earlier, we were going to have that separate field, right? We're saying, hey, this needs to be greater than or equal to the conditional number below, or really you probably see this in a list where you're capturing a bunch of things. You're capturing a lot of data for whatever reason, right? So this is going to allow you to do the same thing. Can't be blank, needs to be a number, needs to be greater than 0. That could be some condition you put in place. And it also has to be greater than or equal to this one, or it could be less than, or whatever the case is. So the A5 over 0 is probably redundant in this one, but it depends on how you want to set it up. All right, so lots of different examples. I mean, the sky is really the limit, just like with formulas in general, but these are some very common and helpful examples of custom validation in Excel. So that's it for this video covering those. This is going to keep your data clean, and it's going to keep it clean from the very beginning of the stream, saving you time from rework downstream, and ensure that you make decisions based on that quality data. Make sure to download this free workbook to leverage these examples in your everyday work. If you like this, please give it a like, comment on what you like, share with colleagues you think would benefit, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on other great Excel tools, tips, and tricks. Thanks for watching, and have an excellent rest of your day.